Hello and welcome to Cindershadow Gaming. I'm your host Cindershadow, and why does 2.147 billion mean to you? We'll find out in This Week in Magic. Well, this week we go over the two ban cards, which is unheard of, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the videos that I did with Desolator Magic and why certain numbers have such a big meaning in the world of MTG Arena. Now, we've gone over this into extent with the Book of Exalted Deeds. This is another card that got banned this week. That's two different bannings in 1 week for cards. That's why I'm posting this as part of This Week in Magic. Yes, I made videos on them, but this is unprecedented when you have two different parties banning two different cards ultimately in the same week. So it's very strange to me to see this and to hear about it and to sit there and go, what is going on? What is gone the wrong way for these cards to be banned? Book of Exalted Deeds is not officially really banned in Standard. It's banned out of the Standard 2022 queue for Arena only. But I believe this banning will actually jack the price up of this card because now people are going to target it very, very quickly in the new Standard format when the new set releases. The new set doesn't release for another week. We're in the middle of pre-release weekend. So it is very interesting to see that this card getting the axe from a format on Arena. But part of that is because of the more easily it's available with wild cards and me calling the shots apparently for opening packs in Arena. If you guys haven't seen that video, do go back through my playlist. It's kind of interesting to see the insanity behind that. But ultimately, Book of Exalted Deeds being banned, this card has enabled myself and Desolator to put together a few videos with it and just to try and see what's going on. And now it's created more questions than answers, namely 1.07 billion, or half of the largest known integer that is a prime number. Being a number of significance in Arena. Now, what do I think about all of this? If you guys haven't seen Desolator's videos on the breaking of Standard or breaking of Arena with this card in particular now and life totals, there's a whole bunch of binary logic there for computer programming that I myself understand quite a bit of, but it did pose the question, why was this number for tokens such a thing? And so it really came, one of my theories that I'm working out right now is I believe that this might actually be the upper limit that the Arena devs have set for your deck lists. So I've covered this in my rigged Arena video on how the shuffling is rigged, how there is not seeming to be so much randomization that there could be in Arena. And what comes down to that is the system can only store so many different random number sequences. And when a deck is queued up into the program, it creates a list of numbers, and that list of numbers correspond directly to your deck list, each number representing a card, and it can only store so much on the server. And I believe this number, this 1.07 billion times 2 being the 2.174 billion, I believe that half number is how many decks that Arena can actually store. So why do I believe that? Well, you're not going to store a negative deck, so you don't need a signed or unsigned integer. So now the negative versions of the deck won't exist. So you only have from 0 to the highest prime number. Now there's two players. Between those two players, they get half of that. And I believe the counters that are stacked up on an angel, or on the angel that we showed in that video, possibly is using that same value in the programming sequence. So when you target something in a program, you set these parameters, right? And then they set that parameter at half the integer number because they can only store that many decks in the system. So now that is the number that it's being targeted in the programming. And this is the only thing in my mind that makes sense. Now, why is it a odd number? Well, you take the largest integer that's out there, the prime number, and you divide by 2 and you get half a number. Well, that half a number, from looking at everything here, that half a number would actually equate to 0. 0 is still a number of counters that apparently can be placed, but they just don't register. So ultimately in the programming, you would say, if this number equals this, or if this situations equals this, then don't show anything on there. So they would just omit 0, but 0 is still possibility in the sequences of numbers, and that would account for that half a number, and why we see the upper limit for that counter, or that number of counters that are possible to put on a creature. So a little bit of a follow-up there, and it's kind of interesting the way I've thought of it, way my mind's taking this, and how the theories of what I believe is possibly the upper limit of how many decks can now be stored on your side. And if there's only 1.07 billion decks that can be stored on your side, or sequence of numbers, they're not exactly decks, but they are a sequence of numbers on your side of the table, that is where your pool is being drawn from for MTG Arena, for the shuffler. And why in some cases the shuffler seems to be rigged is because that upper limit of decks is a very minute number to the amount of decks that can be done in Arena. Now, why do I say that? Well, going back to the original video that I made, you have 2 to the 31st minus 1 is how many numbers are possible for a 32-bit client. In a 64-bit client, you would have 2 to the 63rd minus 1, or 2 to the 64, just to make it easier in the long run. And that number is so astronomically huge, it cannot be stored on the server side. And this is the upper limit. I believe this is where we're going to go. That is a theory, just a game theory. Sorry, I had to steal that. So the update from the Commander Committee was that they banned Hull Breacher. I did cover this in a video on its own, which I'll probably link in the top right corner if you guys want to check that out. It's interesting that they banned a card that's relatively new. Like, this is from Commander Legends. The set's been out for, is it a year now? Maybe a year? I'm not even, I think it was the fall of last year when Commander Legends really came out. You know, Hull Breacher being banned, that's one card. We know there might be more. We saw this with Modern Horizons 1, where it trickled every 6 months. Something seemed to get banned from the set, and we have Modern Horizons 2 that may see some stuff. But, you know, ultimately, down the line, I'm not surprised to see push cards get banned from the formats that they were meant to be in, and that's the biggest problem here. There's been a few posts of people saying, well, why don't you run removal in Commander? Well, first off, you're running a deck that's 1 of 100, and people are just wanting to play that deck out. And removal goes to the wayside when it comes to Commander. It's something a lot of people don't do. They don't do point removal. They do board wipe removal instead. And that's because you're usually dealing with 20 creatures if you're in a multiplayer game. Why are you going to bother doing a point removal and then try and sweep the board? Or they do run point removal, and because there's 100 cards, it's not a card people tutor up. That's another thing that I've been seeing, is people saying, oh, just take out tutors from Commander. That's fine. If tutors were out of Commander, I don't think it would affect me at all. I think the thing with tutors is they do enable loops in Commander. I used to run actually a 60 card. It would have been a legacy style deck. I'm not even sure what it would be now. This is 15 years ago. I used to run a legacy style deck with Dynamic Tutor, with Regrowth, with Gaia's Blessing, and Time Warp. Those 4 cards together, you can loop them indefinitely in the deck. And it's just turn after turn after turn after turn, and then if you have something that you sink your mana into, I used to run it in an Elves style deck, and I would actually be able to lock the board state with it, and it was not fun. My friends just stopped playing against me with it, and this was because they had upped their game, and I turned around and said, well, I'm going to make an Elf deck, and Elves are inherently broken when it comes to this type of thing, and so are Merfolk. Merfolk are on that list as well. So tutors being banned in Commander probably is a good thing. If it comes down to it, I wouldn't be offended or upset that tutors were gone. However, they are part of the game and have always been part of the game. The tutors that take cards from outside the game 100% should stay banned. Well, they're not really banned. It's the fact that there is no sideboard in Commander. So when you're playing in more of a competitive format, you can't sideboard those in. You can't have a card to target. So like Fae of Wishes is deemed useless in Commander. So tutors are half kind of not there because you're not supposed to go find cards outside your deck. But there's always rule 0. You guys can always play with your kitchen table and friends. Now, the last thing I got this week is the Oracle changes. There's a bunch of Oracle changes that we got to go over, and 3 of them in particular actually are something that shouldn't have happened. Now, we have the Ranger creature type is finally in there. So we're getting all these elves and humans that were that have Ranger in the name. They're pretty much a Ranger subtype. The other one is Bard. You got Elvish Bard, Joraga Bard, sure, and then Yisin. So there is a few bards that get updated, so that is now known. This makes sense that they're now known as Rangers on top of their other ones. None of the creatures had any of their existing types removed. So pretty much if it says it's a Ranger in the title, it's a Ranger on the board. Individual card updates. Delinda, Wild Mage. This, my first game of Standard in the new format was against this deck. And I want nothing to do with Standard until this pile of garbage is gone. This card needs to be banned immediately, or other cards that go around it need to be banned. I think this is a broken card. This is something that shouldn't exist. This has now enabled a problem in the game. So, whenever Delinda Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control. Roll a d20. 1 to 14, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the creature, except it's not legendary and it has exile the creature in the end of combat. 15 to 20, choose one of those tokens and roll again. Right? So, the idea with this is there is the new Pixie Guide in Standard. Okay, there is the new Pixie Guide in Standard, where if you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the result. So what happens here is Delinda Wild Mage then targets Pixie Guide. You're getting 2 rolls originally off the bat. So now you have 2 chances to get the 15 to 20. But every time you target this and make a copy of the token, you then make another roll. This then gets to a point you only need about 2 or 3 of these on the board or copies of it, and those dice rolls then start to line up, right? And you have a 25% chance of rolling again. 25% chance at rolling again, and this is just going to throw the numbers right out the window. You get 5 of these on the board, and it's over. Your game is done. You're going to be able to make unlimited copies of this and roll 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 again, and thus you're going to be able to target when in the middle of combat. You're doing this. How do you deal with this? Well, you can't remove. Say you're tapped out, you can't remove it all of a sudden. People are now using the Barbarian class on top of this to give everything haste, so this thing hits the board and you're dead. Plain and simple. This is an inherently broken sort of combo, and like I said, this was the first deck I played. We did it on a live stream. This was the first deck I went up against, and why I turned around and said, I want nothing to do with this, because this is an inherently broken combo. They made a rules change to this card. The rules change is pretty weak. They made it so you may roll again instead of you roll again. So why? I don't get this. Because if you would roll one more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1, ignore the lowest result. I guess at some point you wouldn't ever be able to ignore the lowest result, but it just happens at some point you can get a lower result. It just says ignore the lowest result, so I guess you don't get to pick a high result. I'm not entirely sure there, and why this would, why they had to add May. This ultimately should be a 20 ability only. It shouldn't be a 15 to 20, because that 25% is very easy to do in the long run, and this is going to be your next bannable combo in Standard, and it's not even out yet. That's the biggest thing here, is people are seeing this right off the bat and went, you made this possible in Draft. You can do this in Draft. In Limited Sealed, you can do this. One is a common, the other one is a rare. You open Delinda Wild Mage, you do this combo. You look for that pixie guide straight up, and then you do it in Draft and Limited. And this will break any game that this is possible. Delinda Wild Mage should get one of the banned cards in limited format. From my understanding, they have done limited bans in the past, very far and few. They don't like to do it very often, but this is one that I think will need a banning in limited play, because these two cards together will make things very unfortunate. And if you're playing in Sealed this weekend, you open these two cards up, you just won the Sealed event. Mantle Agents return aura and equipment cards from the graveyard to the battlefield attached to a permanent. In some cases, however, aura and equipment cards chosen can't be attached to it, usually because of a protection ability. That is not correct. If this happens, an aura and the rules tell us that it stays in the zone that it was in. However, equipment, however, doesn't have the same protections in the rules and isn't clear what should happen in this very narrow circumstance. We've added the words "the mantle" to make it clear that you can't put equipment you can't put an equipment that could be attached to a permanent on the battlefield this way. So when you have enchantments and equipment attaching to a creature, what happens there? It does attach. Now, if they say have protection from white and it's a white enchantment or artifact, it immediately falls off the creature because of the protection from white. You can still attach it to it. You can still target it, because attaching is a separate thing in the rules subset anyway. So the idea would be that the equipment was coming back to the board, and that's not the idea of this. So now they're making it so you can't actually attach them to it, from my understanding from this. So the new text is, when it enters the battlefield, return any number of target auras and equipment cards that could be attached to an enchantment. That doesn't actually fix the problem. They do get attached originally in the rules. They still do get attached, and then they fall off immediately. That was what originally enchantments and artifacts did. So now they're saying that could be attached because you're not targeting. There is no targeting here, and that's where I think this makes it a little bit more confusing. Ultimately, it's very interesting to see that they're just kind of pushing this to the side. I'm not entirely sure if that fixes the card. I think it makes things possibly more confusing. Then we have the Book of Vile Darkness. When it creates a Vecna token, it gives several targeted abilities. One of those abilities, one normally known as the Eye Vecna, is supposed to trigger when Vecna enters the battlefield. If a token is already created, however, it's technically entered the battlefield already, and this ability would wouldn't do anything. So the Book of Vile Darkness is getting a small update to ensure that it works as intended. So the new rules text is, at the beginning of your end step, if you lost 2 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. What was the original? Then it's tap, exile Book of Vile Darkness, artifacts you control named Eye Vecna, Hand of Vecna, create Vecna, a legendary 8/8 black creature zombie god creature token with indestructible and triggered abilities of the exiled cards. Okay. So the old one, it gains create with indestructible and all triggered abilities. Oh, weird. It just instead of getting and they had a dot there, and yeah, I still don't understand what that's going on here, because at the beginning of your end step so which one are they talking about? Normally found an Eye of Vecna. We're going to have to look that up and bring it up on screen, because I'm trying to understand what they're talking about. I have it up here on screen, and I'm more confused than ever with this, because they're talking about it when Vecna enters, then Eye of Vecna does something. So Book of Vile Darkness, a Vecna token, and then it gives several abilities. One of those abilities, the one normally found in Eye of Vecna, is supposed to trigger when Vecna enters the battlefield. But the Eye of Vecna says, when Eye of Vecna enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 2 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card and you lose 2 life. It technically entered the battlefield already, and this ability wouldn't do anything. Therefore, the Book of Vile Darkness is getting a small update. So I guess when you create Vecna, this is just saying that you're going to get the new triggered thing where you draw a card and lose 2 life. That's all this is. It kind of makes it a little bit more confusing. Ultimately, it's kind of a weird sort of scenario, because what they should do is they say exile all cards, then enter a creature named Vecna or then create a token called Vecna with all abilities of the cards. So they should do this in a series of events where everything gets exiled and then it makes the token, instead of create the token then exile. That's how you fix this. I don't know how you're not doing this, Wizards. You've done this with stuff in libraries where you exile all these cards and then you may cast. Why can't you do the same thing with these tokens? Oh my god. This is such a simple fix, and they make it more convoluted and more confusing in the Oracle changes by just getting rid of a dot, getting rid of a period, and adding an and it still makes it confusing. Ultimately, you exile all 3 artifacts, then you have Vecna enter, and then you get all the abilities of that as it enters the battlefield. Plain and simple, that's the easiest way to do it. The Vecna token, I don't even think adds these rules on there. Yeah, it's such a weird way to go with the Oracle changes. I think you could have made this better, and ultimately it would have been a lot easier. Anyway, guys, this is where I'm going to leave you. This is your proud Canadian Phoenix signing off. Thanks for watching This Week in Magic. Thank you all for coming out and supporting, and thanks to all the new subs that have come over from Desolator's channel. If you want to help support the channel, do like and subscribe, and there is also Patreon and membership links down below if you want to try and get updated. that all out of the way, I do need to do some sort of channel update here, and I'm going to do it right here at the end because that's where most of my viewers do see it, and they're the ones that really matter to me. Next week, I am starting into a work front of actual work where I'm going to be working 6 days a week. I've been talking about this for a couple months now and trying to give you guys as much leeway as possible. This means videos are going to be kind of on the back end of things because my work has to come first. I got to support my family first, and the channel comes secondly, unfortunately. This doesn't mean I'm going away. This means I will be back. Tonight will probably be my last live stream for a couple months because of this. I might be able to do a live stream when I get my day off. Depends on how tired and how worn out I am. And I will continue to try and do This Week in Magic just to keep things rolling, but that may get pushed to every second week instead of every week, just for the next couple months. This is only 2 to 3 months. I'm not gone forever. I will be back in full fashion. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Have yourselves a great day. Today, as I'm trying to record this, Wizards of the Coast, you got to fix your site because something's wrong with it. Just look at look at what's going on here. We have news, adventures in the Forgotten Realm bulletin. That's all on Exalted Deeds. We'll go over that. Digital news. All right, we get down to here. Tokens of the Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, July 12th. Right, scroll all the way down here. See more results. Oh, hey, now you're updated. Thanks. Wow. Either way, it's funny because I still have the same articles loading over and over again. Right? Tokens of the Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. Tokens of the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. The exact same article. And I had hit that button about 5 times. And now it looks like it's finally updating the rest. Oh, no, it's still repeating. It's just updated a whole new list, and it's still repeating them. So we go from July 9th to July 5th. See more results. July 9th to July 5th. See more results. July 9th to July... There's something wrong with the Wizards archive website there that Wizards needs to fix. I don't know what it is. It's kind of quirky and odd that it's just repeating the same articles over and over again. I'm wondering if I just wait long enough, if it'll let me go further back.